I have a confession to make to you. I can't stand idiot drivers. Are you laughing because your pastor is human or because you have been there? I was coming home from church one day last week, and somebody got right on my tail and followed me. And I hit the gas just a little bit, and he followed. I'm sure I could not put 2 feet between my back bumper and his front bumper. And it's really burning me up. Get off my tail, for goodness sake. And he didn't. I have this fantasy. I would love to be on a straight stretch where there's a double line on one side, and I, with this person on my tail, will slide to the left, making sure there's no oncoming traffic, and let this guy drive past me, looking and wondering what I'm doing, and then I'll slide in right behind him and sit on his tail and see how he likes it. Yeah, isn't that disgusting? You've been there, haven't you? Maybe not the same fantasy, but oh, it burns you up. I came to the road that turns into our development and thought, good, he'll keep on going. He followed me into the development. I drove past 2 of the side streets in our development. He followed me past them, getting closer. I finally pulled into my driveway. He pulled into the driveway right beside me. There's my neighbor. And I have to admit, 2 thoughts went through my mind. Okay, he's my neighbor, he's a good guy, I guess it's all right. But the second thought that followed hard on its heels was this. Oh no, my neighbor, this great guy, is an idiot driver. We all get mad. Anger is a very natural reaction when someone or something crosses your will. And it covers a wide range, all the way from the fly that tends to buzz around you in the middle of summer, and it's just annoying, all the way to the rage you feel because that pedophile got off on a technicality. Anger has this incredible range. It is a powerful part of who we are, so much so that Jesus addressed it early on in what we call the Sermon on the Mount. As he was sitting on that hillside and talking to people, he's looking at a whole host of people who have been raised, lived their entire lives trying hard to be good enough and failing all the time. This cycle of trying to do the right thing and failing over and over and over again was getting to be such a burden. They couldn't stand this kind of life, and yet it seemed like this is what God wanted. Jesus came with this good news. Repent of trying so hard to be good enough for God, and come and experience the life of the kingdom. It's easy to see what he said in this Sermon on the Mount as a list of rules. If you do this, God will bless you. If you don't do this, God will bless you. Jesus didn't begin his public ministry with a list of rules. He began with an invitation. What we call Beatitudes was an invitation. All those who fit these categories come to the kingdom, because here is where you'll find life that is good and blessed. Jesus' great concern in this talk on the hillside was that our relationships with each other be what God intended, and our relationship with God be what God intended. His great concern was that, and with the kind of people we are becoming. One man that I knew used to quote his mother frequently. His mother told him as he was growing up, you don't have to love everybody, but you do have to like everybody. She saw your relationships with people based on how you feel about them. Jesus turned that phrase exactly opposite when he said, you don't have to like everybody. There will be people who rub you the wrong way. There will be drivers who sit on your tail. You don't have to love, you don't have to like everybody. But you do have to love everybody. Treat them as God would treat them. That kind of treatment doesn't come naturally. I, for one, would much rather indulge my fantasy and try to teach this idiot driver a lesson. And Jesus calls to my heart and says, is this love for that person? Oh, Lord, I feel so good to do this, but are you loving me? An apple tree will produce apples, not because it has to try so hard. It just bees. It simply is what it is. And the apples are produced. Jesus invites those people who are listening to him to become something new. And the natural outgrowth of that new heart will be to do the things that God has called us to do. One writer says that the fundamental mistake that the Pharisees and scribes made was their focus on doing the actions that the law requires while ignoring their own hearts and their own character. Their unchanged heart would eventually win out over their carefully orchestrated actions, and the reality would come through. These people are hypocrites. They look like they're doing the right thing, but inside, that heart is just as terrible as someone who does the bad things. For example, Jesus says, these teachers of the law will tell you, don't murder, and if you murder, you're liable to judgment. But Jesus says the real problem is the pervasive anger. He said this, everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Yes, anger is a natural reaction, put there by God for a good purpose. But anger has this seductive, delicious quality to it. You want to coddle it. You want to remember the hurt from what he did, from what she said. You want to repeat it over and over. You want to tell other people, this is what that was done to me. Often it's labeled venting. When you tell the first person about what happened, that's venting. When you begin telling it after that, it's no longer venting, now it's coddling the anger. But then Jesus goes on. The natural progression of anger leads to contempt. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. He used the word raka. Anybody who calls his brother raka will be liable to the council. It's an Aramaic word. It's just a matter of contempt. You jerk. You idiot. Anybody with 2 ounces of common sense would not have done what you just did. How stupid can one human being be? I'm grateful to know that no one here has ever been guilty of words like that in a moment of anger. And some of you are chuckling. to belong, to feel as if you're a part, is a vital need in the spiritual nature of every human being. And contempt spits on that need. Anger is a natural reaction, but we can coddle it until we become angry people. And the natural progression of that is this contempt, this expression of unworth in people. Do you remember when it was frowned upon to use four-letter words? You understand what I mean by four-letter words? Not words like food or love. There was a time growing up when we were told you don't use these words. That day has passed, and today there is an entirely different set of words that kids are encouraged not to use because it's an expression of contempt. Words like idiot and stupid. Janice comes home on a regular basis and tells me about kids who just don't get it yet, and they keep using words like that on each other. Words of contempt. They're not four-letter words, but they hurt. They do damage. And this living with anger produces an attitude of contempt. I want to take a step back for just a moment. What about contempt expressed as affection? You know when you come in on a Sunday morning and you've got a cup of coffee in one hand and a cookie in the other hand, and you know who you are. And someone talks about something really silly they did this past week. You idiot. It's not intended maliciously. It's intended to express affection. Yeah, you did something silly. That's nothing new. We still love you. You're our favorite idiot. So all of a sudden we're supposed to stop saying things like that because those words hurt? Let me give this word of caution. Be careful about that. I'm not going to stand up here and say, stop the banter. It really is an expression of affection, but be careful. Two things to watch for. If there are people around you who are not familiar with your relationship with that person, and they could hear you saying this and think, man, if people who are in this church treat each other that way, what's going to happen to me? Be careful with the people who are around you. And secondly, be aware of the person you're saying it to. It may be that this day something has happened in their lives and they really don't need the contemptuous, affectionate banter. They need you to listen because they're hurting. We can't lay down a rule that says no contemptuous affection, but we can say, be careful. This is a person for whom Christ died. Be sensitive to that. Jesus' message all through the Sermon on the Mount was designed to show that God has a high regard for every single human being, even the idiot driver behind me. God loves him and calls me to express the same regard that God has for him. There's one last expression that Jesus warns us against. Calling a brother fool. Anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. We don't use that word very often. But in Jesus' time, it was a term of not only contempt, but malicious contempt. You were calling this person the worst thing you could possibly think of, giving them the worst possible regard you could. Jesus is saying, a heart that is committed to the kingdom, a heart that's been changed by Jesus, is the place to begin dealing with the anger issues. Okay, how do we deal with anger? Jesus gives us 2 illustrations. Please hear this. What Jesus is doing now, these are not rules that Jesus is laying down. These are illustrations of how a kingdom heart deals with a particular situation. In Matthew 5. So if you're offering your gift at the altar and then remember that a brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First, be reconciled to your brother, then come and offer your gift. I remember as a teenager using this verse to justify not going to church because I was mad at somebody and I wanted to stay mad at them. I knew I was supposed to go and make things right before I go to do something at the church. But I was enjoying being mad. And I wanted to hang on to that for a while. Jesus said, don't go to church until you make it right. I don't want to make it right with him. I'm not going to church. And it misses the whole point. Relationship is more important than ritual. It can be hard. So this person has something against you and you go to them and say, I'm sorry I hurt you. You're making yourself very vulnerable there. What if they're not ready to forgive? What if they won't stay with you? It's a risk you take. But the relationship is so important. That's what Jesus needs to do. So go and apologize if you need to. What if you're the person who's been hurt? This is even tougher. You take the initiative to go to the one and say to them, our relationship's important to me. And you said something that hurt me. There again, you're taking the risk because you don't know what the response is going to be. Why don't you grow up and get over it? It's no big deal. Okay, let it go. Or are you going to hear the words, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. Nobody wants to be thought of as a spiritual wuss. But the fact is, things are said and done that hurt. And that rupture the relationship. So let's make the relationship a priority and find a way together to make it right easier. Jesus talked a bit about the person who wants to take you to court. And his point was, go to that person, not to their attorney, not to some representative, go to the person and ask, how can I be of help to you? Express regard for them, even if they've done something really, really hurtful. You take the initiative to reestablish the relationship. Meantime, I've got to stop calling those other drivers idiots. There's nothing affectionate about my regard for the guy who drives too close to me. But the Lord has to work in me so that it's not just a matter of curbing the tongue. It's a matter of a heart that's changed and expresses affection. So the next time you're behind me, if you want to let me know that it's you, beep. And as you have opportunity to restore a broken relationship that's been broken out of anger, don't coddle the anger. Don't express the contempt. Don't express the angry contempt. Make the relationship a priority. Pray with me.